avoid them getting into their rhythm and their sequences, how they can expose his qualities, and that's something that we have to prepare ourselves for.
Alex?
Hi, Pascal. This is Alex Only from AM New York. How's it going?
Hi, Alex.
With this being a midweek match, how are you approaching the squad rotation and player fitness, especially after these recent run of games? Thanks.
Yeah, we do play a lot of matches in a short period of time. On the other hand, our approach will not be any different, because we want to get the strongest squad out there on the pitch, and that will not change going into whatever game we have to play in this sequence. We just have to make sure that, as I said, the strongest team is available and ready to play.
Andrew?
Hi, this is Andrew Lee with Hudson River Blue.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. You've not hesitated to make changes to try to sort of bring your attack to life in game when you've been behind and just sort of needed something different in attack, but the team's yet to have a sub come off the bench and actually score a goal out of, I think, 50 sub appearances so far this season. Does that make you sort of reevaluate how you're deploying some of the attacking players you bring off the bench, and just how do you assess how that's gone in terms of not kind of being able to get that goal off the bench maybe when you needed it in games?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. We obviously have our roster with players that start and players that have to come off the bench. The guys who can have some attacking involvement or even a game changer in their toolbox, we do have them. Unfortunately, when they've come up on the pitch so far, it hasn't given us that satisfaction of the goals that we need in certain matches. So that is something that we still address. On the other hand, we know which type of players we have coming from the bench and what they're able to add to the game and what is needed. But unfortunately, the outcome is too low at the moment.
Michael?
Hi, Coach. Michael Allen, Pro Soccer and
Hi.
City Radio. Just looking at the past 3 games in May, you've had a really good, almost complete match against Cincinnati, and then played 2 perceived lesser opponents in Pittsburgh and Montreal, and have less than energetic performances, like you were saying, urgent performances, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Is the team guilty of playing up or down to the perceived level of their opponent? And if so, when facing DC on Wednesday, another team that's below you in the table, how do you get the team mentally prepared for a midweek match like Wednesday?
Well, first of all, by saying we must avoid having the arrogance to say that they are below us. I can imagine if you look at the ranking in the league that Montreal, it was below us and still is, but we cannot have this arrogance in our approach. We always have to be aware of what needs to be done and focus on our job and responsibilities in order to get the best game on the pitch. This happened against Cincinnati. We played a decent to good match, but the moment we start to think that we are really, really good, we can also be very, very vulnerable. And even though there were quite a few changes going into the midweek game in Pittsburgh, that should not happen to us what happened there. And against Montreal, it wasn't similar as the Wednesday, but if you don't have the clinical finishing that we need to have in games in the first 15 to 20 minutes, you will get games like we saw on Saturday. And that is something in our process to become this successful team that we have to address and keep working on.
Glenn?
Hey, Pascal. The FC Cincinnati game, I would assume that probably gave you some confirmation that things were, progressing. And then you have the difficult week. So does that, where do you rate the week in terms of the confirmation that things are going in the right direction? How do you assess all that?
Yeah, that's the interesting part. The game against Cincinnati is 1 out of 12 that we've played so far, and we did reach a decent to good level in this game. But the moment you start to think that, accept that you have to know, let me put it this way, you have to realize that you've put a very high standard for yourself in this match, and you have to be aware of what is needed in order to get to that standard every game. And anything less will make you more vulnerable. And that's something that is also shown in the game on Wednesday and Saturday recently against Montreal. And for us, it's a confirmation that we know what we're capable of. And now we have to find that consistent factor to make sure we don't go down again and go up again. But that's the whole approach going into this season, because we want to become more consistent in general.
Were you a little surprised that the performance against Montreal was sort of stale, considering what happened on Wednesday and where you were trying to get?
Yes and no. We had a few other players starting against Montreal again, compared to the starting lineup on Wednesday in Pittsburgh. But it did give us the confirmation that our attacking threat and fast playing forward and the clinical finishing and outcome and impact in the offensive part of the game is still something that needs to be addressed and worked on, because against Montreal that wasn't at our normal level.
And DC United plays 3 at the back. It's been interesting. A majority of your opponents this year have gone 3 or 5 at the back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, just in general, are you seeing that as a trend in,
Yeah.
in football?
You see it, yeah, worldwide, I would say. You see it a lot. And it's an interesting development as well. And it's also very interesting to use this period in time in order to find solutions and make sure you have your counter movements playing this type of shapes in order to be successful yourself with an approach which is not always similar to this trend.
Back to the Zoom, we'll go with Mike Lander.
Pascal, it's Mike Lander.
Hi, Michael.
How you doing?
Hi.
Going back to the question that Mike Allen asked about the team playing up or playing down, is that something that you're seeing individually, or is it more of a group problem?
It's a combination of both, especially if you take the game against Cincinnati as a starting point for the level that we're capable of reaching in our matches. That was a good team performance with a few individuals who stood out in that game. But also the game that we played on Wednesday or recently against Montreal, you see that the team level is average or below average, and you see a few individuals that don't reach their own level, which they did in the week prior to the game to Montreal. So it's bouncing between those two aspects.